So I'm going to keep this a little bit short and sweet because I know that some of you were on our session yesterday, but I mean, we've been at home now for 2 weeks. It's bizarre, isn't it, how quickly, but how slowly all that time passes. And all of our team are still very much working remotely. We haven't furloughed anybody yet, but like every single person, we're looking at what does our business do and how do we adapt. And the first way that we had to adapt was to take our events from face to face to do them online, and we've evolved that program. So we started off with just doing, our very first one was just about international businesses and how they've been coping, but we have this week is our first week where we're doing our 3. So on a Tuesday we do a coffee and cake, if you've got cake for yourself, coffee and connections on a Tuesday afternoon, and that's just very much a bit of networking and a bit of feeding back to us about what's going on, so that we can tell governments and policymakers what challenges businesses are facing, how easy you're finding it to access funding, and just what's going on for everybody. On a Wednesday, today's our very first one of these sessions, and this is a hugely important one. I am talking about how you support your people, and how we support our colleagues, our friends and our family and people that we know through this. It's a big challenge, isn't it? I know people in our team, that very first week we were at home, were saying, this is fantastic, I don't have to commute. It's not very stressful in the morning trying to get myself organised, and the alone time was really suiting people. By the end of the second week, it was a big different story. The news was really kind of stressful, and we were working enormously hard. So productivity, being at home, is definitely not one of our challenges, because I don't think we've ever worked harder. But you can't carry on like that and not be taking time for yourselves and be thinking about your mental health. So today's a really important one, and we'll do our Wednesday session will be all looking at people and how do we support our people. And then on a Thursday, it's about business support. So a practical look at some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, hearing how people are doing and what other people are doing with their business to help inspire us and keep us going. So when we come out of this, fighting, and rather than having thought, actually, we've been closed and how will we recover? So it's been important for us to do that. We've also got a COVID-19 hub, which has got loads of advice, business advice, health and travel advice, community advice, and all the links you'll need. If you still haven't applied for any of the support that's out there and you've got any questions, then there's loads of that information there. We've also been doing some other practical things. We've got a delivery page on our website, so anybody that's making deliveries to anybody in the local area, we're really keen to make sure we're shouting about that. So we've widened our net, and we are supporting members and non-members at this time, because we need a strong business community to come out of this, so that our economy recovers and our people have got jobs and everybody's got a purpose. And I think our purpose is really clear. Our purpose is about supporting business, but it's also about supporting our team. And we've been doing an insight session this morning where our team are kind of learning a bit about themselves and about their colleagues. We've been having team meetings every day and just really making sure that we're supporting our people and keeping our communications channels open. So I think that's some of the highlights that we've been doing, and I'm really looking forward to today's session. So I'm going to mute myself very shortly as I hand over to Wendy, who's going to talk for us next, and Wendy will then hand over to Kev. So Wendy, if you would unmute yourself, over to you.
Hi everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Wendy Callander. I'm the Executive Director at Wellbeing Works, which is a mental health charity in Dundee. We've been around for more than 60 years, which is probably a surprise to people, but up until January last year, we were known as Dundee Association for Mental Health. So we've had a wee bit of a rebrand and a bit of a modernisation of the service, if you like. So our role is to support something like 150 people in Dundee who experience probably severe and enduring mental health challenges. So we're funded through Health and Social Care Partnership with a bit of big lottery funding, with a bit of Rank Foundation funding, to be able to deliver a range of different kinds of programmes and activities that help to keep people well. And the support that we provide is based on a model called 5 Ways to Wellbeing, which is not new and not complex. 5 Ways to Wellbeing was a bit of evidence-based research carried out by New Economics Foundation in London, probably about 15 years ago now. And the 5 Ways to Wellbeing are not rocket science. It's connecting with others, being active, learning new skills, take notes of other people or what's going on around you, and a wee bit of giving back. So pretty simple concepts, but evidence-based research that show by getting involved in these kinds of activities, you help to look after your own well-being. So everything we do at Wellbeing Works fits into that model in some way. So the way we split the programme, I have a team of 12 staff, and the way we split the programme is we'll have an inside programme and an outdoor programme. So inside programme will be things like discussion groups, cooking, arts and crafts, special interest groups like local history. We've got a group of people who are learning to talk Italian. Music is a huge thing for us. So just depends on what is going to motivate interest and encourage people to come in and get involved with us and be able to connect with other people. In terms of our outdoor programme, it's things like we've got walking groups, we've got an allotment up the law where we grow vegetables and things various. We do a bit of garden safari where we go out and do gardens for other people. So we do a bit of gardening for the unicorn. This year we're hoping to be, we had already hoped to have started our adoption of the railway station in terms of looking after some growing space down there. And then we've got a project called Green Buds that's funded through Big Lottery that is all about, it's all about the environment, it's all about conservation and using outdoors to keep well. So as you can imagine, lockdown has had a huge impact on how we deliver our service for a group of people who were already struggling with mental health. We've lost the continuity of our service. My staff are all now working from home, trying to support people over the phone, and finding that quite a challenge, I would have to say. And the main reason for that is that of the 150 people that we have on our caseloads, probably something like 70 or 80% of them are not digitally enabled. They don't have laptops and computers, they don't have smartphones. So we've gone very low tech in providing telephone support. And I was really grateful and fortunate that Foundation Scotland last week had a crisis fund that was offering small grants to charities like ours to look at how we support people. So we were able to access a bit of money to provide low-tech bundles of information that we could send out to people every week. That'll be a wee bit of tips for well-being, a wee bit about how you can exercise at home, some mindfulness colouring in, a bit of good movies that they might be able to watch on TV. It's just those kinds of information. It's low-tech support. And the interesting thing about that, low-tech support is much more expensive than being able to connect in this kind of way. So yeah, it's been a challenge for us this past couple of weeks. I don't expect it's going to get any easier, but we're in it, it's what it is, so we're trying to make the best of that. So I guess what brings me here to speak to you today is we feel like we've got a bit of a handle on how to support people in terms of mental health. So I'm hoping that what I can share with you might help you, your teams, your families, your friends, or anyone else. I'm just going to talk through some of the things that might be going on for people. So in terms of home working, I know for my team, this is quite alien. Home working was never in the plan, and supporting people by phone really wasn't, it's not the best way to do our job. So we're making do with that. And when you think of, I'm going back 20 years in my career to, I used to do mental health in the workplace training, and there were key stressors around demands and relationships and support and environment and all those things. This virus and this way of working has kind of rocked all of that for everyone now. So what were definable and manageable key stressors in the workplace are now less definable, less manageable, and much more prevalent for all of us. So I think we all need to have a wee bit of a recognition of that the world has changed for us in terms of how we work and what work looks like on an everyday basis. So there's all of that key stressor stuff. And then there's the additional stressors that are coming around as a result of coronavirus. So, for example, we individually, collectively, and those we know might be experiencing additional stress that could be caused by the change in routine. It could be caused by not being sure what you're supposed to be doing every day. I know in speaking to my team, I've got staff members that are coping very well with being at home and working, although it's stressful and sometimes difficult conversations. They've adapted and they're managing well. I've got other staff who are not managing so well because it just doesn't feel right, and it feels like we're trying to support people, but there's not an awful lot we can do to support people, and that's difficult for some. I've got another member of staff who's struggling because she's at home with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old and trying to work in that environment. So that's a very real challenge that people are facing as well. I've got another member of staff who lives alone, and in terms of, she's completely isolated. So she spends all her day alone, and then she goes out for a walk alone, and she's not connecting with anyone other than through these kinds of digital platforms, and that brings some additional challenge as well. Other kinds of stressors that are around, people will be missing their routines. They'll be missing going to the Zumba class or going to the gym, or for me, I sing in a choir, that's how I keep well. I'm really missing singing in a choir. Thank God for Gareth Malone. That's all I'll say on that one. But people are starting to get anxious now about, I haven't been to the hairdressers, my roots are coming. Like, these are real stressors for some people. So it's different things to different people. So there's a bit about stress, there's a bit about anxieties that are coming in that might be around things like worrying about your family, worrying about people in your family that you can't connect with other than digitally, not seeing people. I know for me, I've got an elderly father-in-law who's in lockdown in a care home. That's a real stressor, that's a worry for lots of people. There's things like people are worried about finances and worried about job security. These are all very real stressors. In terms of mental health though, what might also start to happen is things like, you know, it's an interesting thing. We have lots of people on our caseload who have some obsessive behaviours. So obsessive hand washing and cleaning or whatever the obsessive behaviour might be. And it's interesting that coronavirus and the guidance that's coming from government and health officials is wash your hands more, keep things clean, isolate yourself. Behaviours that we have spent years in some cases getting people to try and break. The instruction is now do exactly that. So that's a bit of a paradox for us. But these can be very real things as well. And I expect there will be some new behaviours that come around because of this enforced isolation. I think the other thing that is likely to happen for some people is just corona fatigue, because every time you switch on the TV, there's news, there's updates, it's on social media, it's on the radio, it's all over the place. And I think some people will experience fatigue from that, and I think it'll cause a lot of people a lot of anxiety, and I don't doubt for a minute it's affecting the mood of the nation. So lots of things going on for people. I think in terms of business leaders and managers, what we can do, first of all, I think my observation would be, remember that we're in it as well as our staff, that we're just as likely to experience some of these challenges as our staff are, but we'll have an additional responsibility of looking after a staff group. And I think a couple of key messages for me would be, think about how you communicate with your staff and look at as many and as varied ways of communicating and connecting and keeping people in touch with you and with each other, because I think, going back to the 5 ways to well-being, the whole thing about connecting with others is probably the single most important thing, and feeling like you're part of something and then you're not in this alone. So there's definitely something about that. Discuss workloads and listen to what people are saying and what their anxieties are about the work that they're doing, because it might be that there are additional pressures, and I've spoken with a few people who have said it's actually busier and more challenging working from home. I'm doing more than I ever did in the office. So there's that end of the spectrum, and there's another end of the spectrum. I know for some of my team, they're feeling a bit redundant in that they're not delivering the support in the way they want to and the way that they're used to doing. So I think it's about checking in with people about where they are with that, and wherever they are with that is okay. And I think it's recognising that some roles just don't lend themselves to home working, and just acknowledging that. And I think in terms of, there's maybe an opportunity. Alison mentioned at the start of this conversation, the thing about being ready for what comes at the end of this when we get back to some kind of functioning again. There might be new opportunities, there might be different things that we can do. And is there anything that staff can be doing now that might just be, that it might be a motivating bit of work, so that there might be opportunities there. Just to finish off, I've got a few wee hints and tips on what might help if you're feeling like your mental health and well-being is becoming an issue for you. I think the first thing would be that whatever you're feeling, acknowledge that it's real and it's okay, whatever it is. If you're experiencing fatigue and stress from the amount of information that's coming to you, then edit, limit, restrict yourself, be selective about what you listen to, because it's quite wearing. Next point would be stay connected with family, friends, colleagues, anybody through whatever channels you can. If it helps, write stuff down, keep a journal, keep a diary. I've taken to writing letters, like handwritten letters to family members, which is something that I used to do a long time ago. Technology took over and I stopped doing it, and I've started doing it again. It's working for me, it might work for somebody else. On a very basic level, just breathe. Good belly breathing, where when you breathe in, you fill your tummy with air, because it helps to relax you. And if you're going to Google and search anything, search mindfulness and self-compassion, because that's what's going to help you to look after you. That's all I've got. I'm going to hand over to Kevin now to give us a bit of his perspective. Thank you very much.
Yeah, brilliant. Wendy, that was great. I certainly got a lot from that as well. I think the first thing I want to say is a bit of a disclaimer. Okay, I am I am not a mental health expert. I don't have the kind of history in the background that Wendy has. All I have is really my own experiences and the experiences and my own stories, which have over the time kind of evolved into an approach that I use to manage my anxiety. So I want to be really clear, though. I am not saying that what I'm about to share with you is a prescription. That's a very dangerous thing to do. It might work for some of you. It might not be the approach that's going to work for you. But all I know is that what I'm going to share has made a massive, massive difference to my life. Before I get into that, I for a bit of context, explain a little bit about my background. So I've been running my own business now for 5 years. And the turning point in my life that moved me from working for somebody else to setting up my own business was a mental health breakdown. So I had a stress-related illness that kind of started off as anxiety brought about through stress that quickly descended into depression. Now, I did the classic man thing, right? So I'd been feeling pretty low for about 3 years, but I was unquestionably the best actor in the world. I just put on the brave face, showed up as the Kev that everybody expected to see, but deep down I was hurting and I wasn't in a great place at all. And it got to a point where, I knew that I had to go and seek some help. So I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. That was the initial thing, and I, when you kind of reflect and look back, I realised that I always had a history of being over anxious and irrationally so at times. So I, spoke to a counsellor, not long after being off, which again, the knee jerk is, I don't need a counsellor. I'm the kind of person that people come to when they're feeling down, and I kind of, boost them up. But I knew that I needed to speak to somebody. So certainly starting a conversation with another human for me just made a massive difference. What I was able, through having some of those initial conversations and reflecting, was realizing that one of my biggest challenges was a thing that I call false narratives. So let me explain. So a false narrative is something that we all do. It's a story that we tell ourselves that simply isn't true. It's a story without foundation. It's we're missing pieces in the story, so we fill it with things that aren't true, but to us feel completely 100% real. Now, when I look back, that's the history that I've got, is of telling myself stories about myself, that I'm not good enough, that I can't do this and I can't do that, and what is this person thinking of me, what are they thinking of me, and creating these really, and I'm a storyteller anyway, and I'm a creative person, so that can actually be worse, because you add arms and legs onto the stories that are inside your head. If you've got one story in your head, then that's okay. You can kind of maybe mentally deal with that. But what I was finding was I had dozens of competing negative thoughts and things. And it's like, think of an analogy of a goldfish bowl that's really meant to accommodate two fish. And imagine you put 20 fish, 30 fish, 50 fish. All of those fish bang off of each other. It's the same with the thoughts inside your head. And certainly that was the case for me. I couldn't think rationally or clearly enough about these thoughts. And, if I'm not speaking to somebody, they stay in here. If I'm not finding another way to bring those thoughts outside of my head, then it just gets worse. And what starts maybe as anxiety quickly becomes something much deeper. And in my case, it was depression. Now, I count myself as being very, very lucky, in that I would describe my mental health breakdown as situational. You know, the situation was a work-based situation, and the situation was partly my own doing because I never spoke to anybody. I tried to be brave and, you know, not speak to anybody and just deal with it, because I thought this was just normal. I thought, you know, loads of people feel this way and they're able to continue and to function, and why can't I? So I quickly, you know, the council that I work with really helped, and it certainly created a few breakthroughs. For me, the biggest thing consistently that has made a difference to me is writing. So my approach for dealing with those false narratives is to write, and writing has made a massive difference to, you know, to every aspect of my life, including writing for pleasure, you know, including, you know, creative writing, including you know, I wrote a little book for a little girl, and, you know, that was a joyful experience, and so I like writing anyway, but I also think better when I write. So what I'll do is I'll take you through the approach, and it's funny, I was on a webinar with a coaching organisation that I know very well, and I was talking, it was false narratives was just this little segment in the conversation, and it was only by talking it through that I realised I'd actually developed a process, an approach, but I'd never actually kind of written it down. So there's a blog post online that you can read the kind of fuller background. But what I'll do just now is I'll take you through the 5 steps to my, I haven't got a clever title for it yet. It's Kev's false narrative approach. That's as good as you're going to get. But so the approach, first of all, is having that awareness that I'm not feeling great. Yeah. So I think, you know, had I identified that back when I wasn't well in my employed role, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So I think for me, it's about acknowledging how you feel. You know, acknowledge how you feel. Don't ignore it. Don't try and push it under the carpet. Don't try to rationalize it and logic it away into oblivion, because if you do that, the deeper rooted these things become. And if you've got a false narrative in your head, believe you me, if you leave it there, it digs in deep and it becomes the truest story you've ever lived. So for me, it's really about that early warning sign is what I call it. So I know that if I'm feeling anxious, I know what that feels like. I know what I know, and I know to stop. I know to kind of say to myself, right, something's wrong here. Something isn't quite right. So what do I need to do? What do I need to do? So the first thing that I do is I grab a pen. I grab a pen and I start writing, and I just write and write and write. So stage 2 is what I call the story dump. So I get all the stories that are in my head that are causing me issues, the false narratives. I get them out and I just keep writing. There's a process called free writing where you basically set a timer, and the only rule is that you can't stop writing. That means even if you're halfway through it and you think, oh, I have to go to the shop, then you write down what it is that you need. You just keep on writing, and you don't edit yourself as you go. You just get everything out of your head. This isn't about creating a refined piece of writing. It's just getting it out there. Once you've got all those stories out of there, in fact, actually, in the process of writing some of these stories, something magical happens. You start, you know, rationalizing some of them, and you can kind of go, you know, that particular story, I know that that's just not true. I know that I can actually really easily dismiss that one. So some of these challenges, certainly in my case, I can almost immediately, as soon as the pen is on the paper, as soon as I'm seeing it in black and white, I'm going, right, do you know what, that actually, I'm calling, and I will swear, I'm calling bullshit on that. I'm calling, that is absolute nonsense. I am going to dismiss that one. And I keep going through that process. I keep on working my way through it. And then what what I do next is I then review it. I go back through everything, and I'll have a lot of scored out stuff where I have already dismissed them as illogical stories and stories that are simply not true. And then what I'm left with is a number of other stories. Typically what I find is I'll only be left with one key thing, one key challenge that I can't rationalize and I can't talk my way out of. And for me, that's a really, really joyful moment when I realize, do you know what, all this crap in my head actually is really boiling down to one thing that is causing me issues and challenges right at this moment. And what it means is I can then go, right, now I can deal with you. So the fourth stage is reflecting on the stories that are left over, reflecting on those stories, not putting myself under pressure to come up with answers or solutions but I just go a little bit deeper and try and understand, what is going on here? What is the challenge? And what I'll tend to do again is just reset the clock to another 10 minutes, and I grab my pen and I just write. I put it along the top of the paper, along the top of the page, this is the issue, and I just scribble that down, and then I just have another period of focus writing where I just get everything out. Yeah, I just get everything out, and then again I look at that and I try and see. Now, a lot of times by that fourth stage, I'm already feeling better. I'm already feeling more in control because I've taken a positive action. And I would say probably 75% of the time, maybe heading towards 90% actually of the time, I just need the 4 stages, right? I just need the 4 stages, because that period of just reflecting on that one issue or that one mental challenge, I can usually figure it out myself. So I kind of call this a form of self-coaching. I'm able to kind of coach myself through it. I've also learned a hugely, hugely valuable lesson through everything I've been through, which is I don't have to go through this alone. I don't have to bottle things up. I don't have to put on a facade and pretend that everything is okay. My approach, though, is very much if I get to this stage and I know that there's something a little bit deeper here, step 5 is speak to another human. I'm lucky that I have got a couple of business mentors. So if the thing is business related, I've got a few business people that I know that are friends, and we kind of mutually coach each other and mentor each other. So I'll reach out to them. I have a professional coach, so the coaching organisation I mentioned earlier on. There's a coach there who's based out in London, who I know that I can set up a few sessions to help me. I haven't had to do this yet because I've been able to manage a lot of things. But if the issue needed a counsellor or a therapist, again, I would go and seek out the right counsellor or therapist. Right now, I have three core people that I know that I can go to, and two of those kind of cover both the business and the personal aspect as well. So for me, it's really about me knowing when I need to speak to somebody and when is the right time. And it's, if I use an example, like a realistic example and a genuine example, 2 weeks ago I had just a bit of a wobble. It was that kind of, oh dear. Again, I'm watching my language for the audience. I know some children might be watching. But it was a case of I'd sold 6 things. So since the start of the year, I've been focusing a lot working with charities. So I'd sold 6 things to charities, and 5 of those things were in-person workshops, and they were all cancelled. I managed to recover 1, but my whole business was looking pretty bleak, and that false narrative kicked in, which was total fatalism. I am going to fail. I am not going to be able to survive. I can't provide for my family, etc., etc., etc. And it was a real fear and a real panic. Literally, that lasted about 5 minutes. literally, because I caught myself thinking the way that I was thinking. I could sense how I was feeling. I could feel everything being tense. So I just kicked into that process, and I came out of that with a really, really pragmatic perspective. So from starting off of being, this is going to kill my business, to I'm really, really lucky. I'm really, really fortunate where I am right now. And this isn't just a fluffy version of, gratitude. This is, I don't have staff. I don't have to lay anybody off. I don't have premises. I don't have ridiculous overheads. I am actually, relatively speaking, lucky. And instead of worrying about that, I concentrated on how I can reshape my business. And I went from being worried and anxious into really being into that kind of action mode, and really focus on where I needed to go. So that's just an example, but writing in general for me is the key. But don't dismiss the kind of enjoyable side of writing as well. If you've got a bit of time, write a bit of family history, write some memoirs, write some of the funny stories of your life, do some writing with your kids, do some storytelling with your kids, create a story. I'm away to share a storytelling kind of game that I'm going to be sharing with everybody online that they can use for free to kind of create some story prompts for kids. So enjoy, this opportunity to spend more time with people, explore writing, and above all, my last message is, don't go through this alone. Isolation is a pretty bleak word, but we can still connect with people. We can still have conversation. And finally, just don't ignore how you're feeling. That's probably the key message for me. So thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, then we'll. But in true professional style, I will now hand over to Mr. Ross Barty, who will bring forward any questions. Thank you for watching.
Thanks very much, Kev. Absolutely fantastic. Really interesting to hear about that. We've got some questions going on in the chat here. We've got one for you, Wendy, from Manny at Sleepers. He's asking, can you list the 5 ways to well-being, please? Oh, sorry, we'll need to unmute you as well.
You hear me now?
It's better.
Yeah. Okay. So 5 ways to well-being. You can Google it. There's a ton of information. This is a really well-used model that's been used throughout the country and has been for many years. But just a wee review of it. 5 ways to well-being. First one is connect. So that's connecting with other people. That can be connecting through any of them, like by phone, by text, by Skype, by WhatsApp, by Zoom calling or team calling, just whatever it is. It's connecting with other people. My caveat to that would be connect with people who make you feel good, because we all know people who at times when you need a lift or just some positivity, there are people you should call, and there are people that you think, do you know what, I'll leave them for a while when I'm feeling a bit more stronger and resilient myself. So number 1, connect with other people. Number 2 is be active. And that doesn't mean you have to take out a gym membership. Being active is just move some. Our client group, this is probably their least favourite bit of the 5 ways to well-being. We can't get people to exercise, but they like to dance, they like to walk. So it's just keep moving is good for your well-being. Learning something new doesn't need to be academic learning. It could be learning how to knit a trauma teddy. It could be learning how to talk Italian. It could be learning how to make an omelette. It's just about the processes that take place in your brain when you learn something new. It creates new neural pathways. It creates positive endorphins. It makes you feel better. Learn something new. Taking notice. When the 5 ways to well-being research was done 15 or so years ago, the thought at that time in terms of taking notice was about just observe what's going on around you in a mindful way. So, you know, it's like smell the flowers and get outside and see nature. I think as we, as a culture, have evolved, my observation on taking notice is things like connect with real time, real people, real things, and it's kind of counterintuitive at this time, but the amount of time we spend on screens, either on phones or computer screens at work or TV screens, where everything that we take in is filtered through a channel. So for me, taking notice is about going old school, analog, get outside and touch a tree or just something that grounds you. The last one is, the last of the 5 ways to well-being is about giving, and that doesn't have to be giving of time or money or you know, charitable giving. It might just be telling somebody to look nice today, or hold a door open for someone, or just do something nice for somebody. Because we know that by doing something nice for someone else, it makes us feel better about ourselves. So 5 ways to well-being, not rocket science, not complicated. There's loads of information about it. It's a really easy model to incorporate into your daily life. Even under these difficult times, it's all doable. Even if your exercise is kettle exercises, that's not necessarily with a kettle weight. It could just be while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, do some stretches. So 5 ways to well-being, my favourite thing.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Wendy. Great. You might be able to help us with this next question from Shona Hamnet. Any idea how you would get referred or refer yourself to the Dundee Mental Health Works?
Okay, so to get referred to Wellbeing Works?
The Dundee Mental Health Works?
So
we could maybe bring Shona in on this one. If Shona, you want to unmute yourself, you can maybe elaborate a little bit further on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just to see whether or not we could, for what it is that you do, whether or not you could just do a self-referral, or do you have to go through a process through your GP for your scheme?
Okay, so referrals need to come through, they need to come through a referral process, but people who can refer, GPs can certainly refer, but we'll also take referrals from mental health teams, so community psychiatric nurses or psychology services, but from other mental health charities, from supported accommodation or college or community learning. If you are someone or you know someone who thinks they would benefit from our help, first protocol I would say is speak to your GP. Obviously at this time we've put a hold on referrals because we're not able to connect with people to properly understand what their support needs are. But if you think that you know someone who would benefit from our service, start the process, because as soon as we can, we'll pick up on it.
That's great, thank you. Just one more quick one then. What about for a business that's maybe looking, do you know anybody or any good organisations that you could do a referral scheme for their staff?
Okay, so this is actually one of the reasons we joined the Chamber last month. We're new members to the Chamber, but it's the recognition that, you know, I mentioned earlier that we feel like we've got a handle on what works in terms of helping people and groups and organisations to manage mental health and to understand it and to manage it, to be able to work with it. So part of one of my reasons for joining the Chamber was to be able to reach out to organisations to say, we can help. We can offer workshops. I'm happy to come and do presentations. In terms of your question, are there any organisations at the minute who are doing it? Probably not, other than Health and Work Support. We're running up until, I think, until this month. I think they've now lost their funding for that support, and staff have been redeployed into dealing with crisis. What I anticipate, I hope I'm wrong, but I think I'm right, is that mental health is going to take a bit of an upsurge as a result of the current situation. So I think all of my peer organisations, all of us who work in this sector, really need to look at how can we help to respond to that. I'm happy to be in those conversations. I know it's going to come, really.
Thanks, Wendy. That's great. Alison, I see that you've got a question in there. Maybe you could, Kev could help answer that one for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was interested in something that Wendy said as well. So, you know, like if one of the coping mechanisms at the moment is that we're all just taking lots of action because it's helping make us feel better, surely at some point we're going to overdrive with that. So I was just interested in what how we could rein ourselves back in if there's a need to do that. Yeah, so a question for maybe Kev to answer first and then Wendy, if that's all right.
Okay.
I think it's a brilliant question, because I think there's a trend to, I have to be busy, I have to be able to spin the plates of managing the family responsibilities, to delivering business, to getting new business. I had a situation on last Monday. I had a wee plan and I'd written it out, and I was like, right, okay, brilliant. I can probably do about 3 or 4 hours work during the day while the kids are up and about. And it was literally about an hour into the day, I was like, nah. It was kind of managing my own expectations and kind of going, do you know what? My responsibility first and foremostly, while my wife's working as a nurse, is I need to care for the kids. I need to make sure they're supported. I need to, that is my priority. So I managed my own expectations, pulled back from putting pressure on myself, because I have a history of doing that, and that, funnily enough, creates more anxiety. So I'm giving myself more space. I've realigned and reshaped my day, where I'm getting up earlier, doing a little bit of what I call the focused work, where I need peace and quiet, and then during the day my responsibility is to support the kids. If I can answer emails and do bits and pieces, great. But I think there is a real challenge here of getting the balance right, where we don't want to be bored, but we're not superheroes. But we can't do everything. And I think if we put that pressure on ourselves, then absolutely, I do agree with Wendy. I think there is going to be, sadly, a bit of a mental health epidemic as a result of this whole experience, and organisations like Wendy's have never been more needed. And I think that's a really positive thing, that there are a lot of great people out there that are in a position to support. But yeah, so to answer the question very quickly, yeah, absolutely, we need to cut ourselves a bit of slack, manage our own expectations, and balance things with the family, the business, the responsibility, and the self. We still need to have a life and enjoy ourselves.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that, practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is an interesting thing. It's obviously taken a bit of an upsurge in recent years, people practicing mindfulness, but there are still lots of people who don't get it and think it's a bit fuzzy. So I would say if you can Google mindfulness practice or self-compassion practice, what it does is it makes you slow down. By the very nature of it, it makes you take time just to think about, what is it I'm feeling, and that's okay. And I think if I can, in terms of what's going to help at the minute, I think self-compassion is the thing that's going to help. Yeah, we all have stuff to do in terms of our jobs, and like Kev said, if you're confined to barracks with family, then that's going to put demands on you whether you like it or not. So it's finding a bit of time where you can practice a bit of self-compassion. But something that we encourage our participants to do is to think about if they had a well-being toolbox, and sometimes we do this with an actual little box, what would you put in it? What would be the tips and tricks that you would use that help you to keep well? Now, that might be bubble bath, it might be a particular CD, it might be the smell of certain candles, it might be a journal or writing. Just take 5 minutes to think about what would be in that box and create that box. Make time for yourself. My instruction to my staff, at the end of this crisis, I just want us all to be hale and hearty and ready for whatever comes next. So whatever it takes for people to get through this, get through it. Get through it. Look after yourself first, then you're able to look after other people. Cliched but true.
No, that's absolutely great, Wendy. We really appreciate that. And Kev, same with yourself. Thanks so much. I think that's the last of the questions here. So I think I'll probably just pass it back over to Sarah if she's there.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, thanks very much to Wendy and Kev. Obviously, what you've both said really will kind of hit some people, and I think this is probably just the start of things. You know, who knows what the next couple of weeks are going to bring? Who knows what the next couple of months are going to bring? Who knows longer term what will happen? But certainly those kind of key takeaways, you know, today are really key, and I hope that, you know, people share those with other people as well. You know, don't kind of keep it to yourselves. You know, the webinar is being recorded. You know, within the next 24 hours, it'll be up on our website. Share it with your team. Share it with your family. You know, the support and the you know, experience from both Wendy and Kev are really important. So yeah, please feel free to share those. What's coming up next? We've got our business support webinar tomorrow with guys from Thorntons and Johnson Carmichael. They'll be speaking about the jobs retention scheme, the business interruption loan scheme, and a little bit of kind of general accountancy as well, and cash flow. Next week we'll be doing the coffee and cake webinar on Tuesday again, which is just for members to get together and kind of share issues, challenges, all that kind of stuff. And then Wednesday, we're looking at putting together a webinar again for employees and employers about kind of leading a virtual team, what challenges people have experienced and how they've overcome it, how they're working themselves remotely, and kind of maintaining and boosting morale within the team. And another business support one on Thursday. So that's kind of the way the weeks are going. They are changing on a weekly basis, so we're trying not to plan too far in advance. Obviously want to keep things topical and current. So that's about it from me, to be honest. I don't know if you've got anything else you want to say, Alison.
Sorry, couldn't get my unmute to come off. You know, when you're going, where's the cursor? No, I was just typing it in the chat. I just want to say thank you so much. I think brilliant to hear from Wendy and from Kev about their take on this. Massive well done to Sarah and to Ross for looking after the session. It's been a really important one, and I think, as everybody said, we've got to really focus on this. just I think there's some brilliant takeaway points. But thank you so much. I thoroughly appreciate it and look forward to catching you on another webinar soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.